So if you're new here, I welcome you. My name is George. I'm a biological scientist, and I started this GLP-1 journey, this adventure, at the end of July 2025. And I share these weekly updates to stay accountable and to share what I'm learning along the way, and to encourage others, especially those of us in our senior years. The meaningful change is still very much possible. So this is week 25. And if there's one thing I've learned so far, it's this. Progress is not linear. It shows up in trends, not single data points. And that applies not just to the scale, but to how we eat, how we feel, and how we protect muscle along the way. So before we look at the charts, the numbers, I want to show you something practical. I've been asked probably more than a few times what a typical lunch looks like for me while on this GLP-1 journey. And we're not talking about a perfect meal, not a social media meal, just real repeatable lunch. You know, the kind of meal I come back to again and again because it's simple. It's protein forward. It keeps my body sugar steady. And just as important, it's something I actually enjoy eating. So before we get into the numbers again, let's take a quick look at what lunch looks like for me most days. But I need to warn you about something. Fairly and lovingly, if you don't like sardines, you might want to abort this video now. You have been warned. Okay, folks, so a few of you have asked me what George eats for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Well, this is lunch, even though it's a little late in the day. Christmas kind of messes things up a little bit with timetables. So here's one of my staples, and I know some people are going to get maybe a little grossed out, but we have 2 cans of sardines. We have some red and white cabbage. We have some red onion. We have some pumpkin seeds and some Parmesan cheese, a tomato. Of course, we have a lemon juice, and I'm going to have about a tablespoonful of good Greek olive oil, extra virgin. And that's going to be it. And if you're wondering what this entails as far as calories and so on, it's about almost 700 calories, so it's pretty good. And what I'll be doing before this, which is a hack, is I'm going to have a tablespoonful of cider, apple cider vinegar and water. That's going to cut my glucose spike because this is obviously loaded with carbs, but not that many carbs. The carbs here are about 29 grams. The fats are 45 grams, and that's mostly from, of course, the sardines and also from the olive oil. And then we have a total protein, which is tons of protein. This is 53 grams of protein. I don't usually load as much. Usually I go between 35 and 40. But that's what it is. And of course, there's the carbs are insoluble fiber. That's going to be good for the gut. And so there you have it. This is my meal. I know some people have asked me to kind of let you know what exactly this is because I've spoken about this particular meal before. But this is one of my staples. So I hope that you get encouraged, that you do something similar and continue on your GLP-1 journey. And as you saw in the previous video, I try to include a generous amount of protein with every meal. What I just showed you is one of many lunches I put together that combine protein, lots of good fiber, and additional ingredients that provide important micronutrients. And you will notice, for instance, extra virgin olive oil. And that's something I include. That's not just because of my heritage, but I include it as often as possible, typically every day. And the pumpkin seeds, one of my favorites, they're rich in magnesium. And listen to this, pound for pound, contain more protein than most foods. It's a bit of a superfood if you like. And the Parmesan cheese is a fermented cheese with some unique health benefits. And the sardines, well, they're loaded with omega-3 fatty acids. And if you want a deeper dive into omega-3s, I have a full video on their documented benefits, which I will link in the description. Now, here is why I'm showing you this. What you're looking at is a chart that I created using my body composition scans, which I do about once a month at my doctor's vitality clinic, not too far from here. And you probably heard the concern, it's all over, that people on GLP-1 medications can lose up to 20% of their muscle mass. And for some, the fear alone has been enough to delay or even avoid starting therapy. But as you can see here, well, I've lost 44.5 pounds, and that was back in January 7th, so just a few weeks ago. Well, I've lost 44.5 pounds over roughly 5 months. Only about 2 pounds of that came from muscle, shown here as dry, lean body mass. And I knew from the beginning that losing some muscle is inevitable with any weight loss approach. But I also knew that if I focused on eating well, on prioritizing high quality protein, and doing some resistance training 2 or 3 times a week, well, I had a very good chance of preserving muscle and maintaining strength. And this right here is the proof. And if I can do this, believe me, you can too. Now, let's see how George did this past week. So now that you've seen how I'm eating and how this has helped me protect lean mass, let's zoom out for a moment and look at the bigger picture. Now this chart, which is quite familiar to you if you've been to my channel before, shows my overall progress over the past 25 weeks on this journey. And I started back in July 28th at 256 pounds, and up this week I'm down 49.6 total, with about 16 pounds to go to reach my stated goal of 190 pounds. And over the past week alone, I'm down 1.3 pounds, which keeps my average rate of loss right around 2 pounds per week. And from a medical standpoint, I'm currently titrated to 12.5 milligrams of Zepbound or tirzepatide. And I've been at this dose for about 8 weeks now, and most likely I'll stay right here because it's working and the side effects are quite manageable. So far, so good. Pretty much as expected. Or honestly, maybe even a little better. I guess I can call myself a moderate overachiever, at least relative to the clinical trials. Now, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure what my final weight should be once, God willing, I reach that goal. Why? Because that would be kind of foreign territory for me. I haven't been at that weight since my mid-20s. That's quite some time ago, when I was probably the fittest and probably the healthiest I've ever been. In fact, my personal trainer and son-in-law, Pat, thinks I might be able to go slightly lower in weight, and that's possible, if I were aiming to be at under 14% body fat. And I'll put a link to Pat's YouTube channel below so you can see what I have to put up with. Just joking. He's a good guy. But honestly, at my age, 14 to 15% body fat is nothing to sneeze at. And even right now, at 206 pounds, my lean body mass stacks up to roughly the 85th to 95th percentile compared to my peers. And I'm generally grateful for that. And with that brief moment of unmitigated self-absorption, let's wrap things up for this week. And as we close out this week, I want to thank you genuinely for spending a few minutes of your life with me. Whether you're already in a GLP-1 journey, you're seriously considering one, or just trying to understand the biology behind metabolic health, I'm glad that you're here. I call this a journey, sometimes even an adventure. But honestly, this has been life-changing for me. And as more data has emerged, what we're learning is that GLP-1s have pleiotropic effects, which is just a fancy way of saying they do far more than just promote weight loss. So think heart, think kidneys, joints, digestion, much more. This therapy isn't just about weight. It's truly about whole body transformation. And if you're a fellow traveler on this road, let me encourage you. Progress takes time. It's rarely linear. And small, steady steps really do add up. If this update has been helpful, I also publish educational videos, usually midweek. And this coming week, well, we're going to be jumping into some hot waters. The battle over protein and the ongoing debate between plant-only and meat-only camps of health enthusiasts. And believe me, this should be fun, or I might just get my head chopped off. But I'm hoping that at the end, science and reason will have their day in the sun. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing so you don't miss the weekly updates and science-focused videos along the way. And thank you again for walking a part of this road with me. Stay curious, be patient with yourself, and be at peace. This is George with GLP-1s for Seniors, and I will see you next time.